In today's video, I'm going to be showing you the regular maintenance required to keep the Veritas Honing guide working at its prime. Hope you enjoy. In order to keep this maintained, we obviously have to keep this whole thing clean. So the first thing I do is actually take all these parts apart. First, starting with this jaw, just here now, you want to keep these parallel as you're taking them off, because you obviously don't want them to get jammed, because both these screw threads just here are actually attached to this bottom jaw. Now, these two will come out. If you look really closely, they're actually seated in this little area here, and there's a little plastic washer on both sides. So as you drop that lower jaw out, you want to make sure you don't lose these two little plastic washers. And now the easy part, taking that top jaw off. Simply undo the screw thread there, and once again there is a little plastic washer on this screw that you don't want to lose. Now that's all you can take apart. You can't take the roller off this because that's part of the roller assembly. So here's your parts for that. And on the fence, I like to take this screw out. You can't take that off, it's captured on there. And I like to take this one here off. So there's all our parts disassembled here. Now, with the first bit of cleaning, I like to just start with the roller here, and with a toothbrush or any sort of brush, you want to brush in nice and close. So just in here on where there's a spring thread, you want to keep that nice and clean. Now you can see that I'm picking up a lot of dirt, and that'll be dirt from metal filings and stuff from sharpening. Likewise on the other side, you want to get right in there and try and clean as much of this out as possible. You can brush in along the back just here, on the back of the wheel this side. Now we're just getting what we can on the surface edge here at the moment, because you can't really get right in behind just using a brush. So we're going to have to tackle that next. So you can actually roll this wheel around as well and just clean up against that roller. Once that's done, you can bring in just a squirty bottle with a bit of water, and you can either wet your paper or wet in the back of the roller. I like to wet just in the back of the roller there, and then get your paper towel, and might just need a small section like this. I'm just going to bunch up the paper towel like this, and you're just trying to clean off as much of that gunk in under the back of your roller as possible, just so it doesn't build up in behind the back there, because that's just going to lead to rust and just dirt build up that you don't want. And you can see that there's still a little bit of dirt just up and around here, but if you can't get it, don't worry too much about it. As long as there's nothing particularly loose there, and you've cleaned off that spring and this sort of little cammed section on the other side here, that's good enough. Now you want to clean this roller here. Now you don't need to bring it back to dead shiny. You're just taking any grit from your sharpening stones or anything like that off there, just so it's not left in here. And that's sort of what you're cleaning out here, so there's no metal swarth and no grit from your sharpening stones left in there to abrade anything. And then, just with a damp cloth on the rest of this, or just adding a little bit of water like I am here, you could use a little bit of alcohol if you need to clean it a little bit more, and you're just going to wipe the whole frame over. Get as much of that dirt off as you can. Now, while per se it doesn't matter too much, you don't want to leave much dirt on here, because it does just build up and make it dirty. And while this is all painted and or nicely coated, it's not going to rust on the main body parts or on the brass parts. You still just want to keep them clean to increase the longevity and prevent any wearing out. Next, I just move on to this jaw thing, the jaw part, and once again, just a quick clean on this, because this isn't one of the moving parts, it's kind of the fixed part, so that is something that's not so important. Now we want to come on to this lower jaw, and once again, keep that nice and clean. This is where your blade clamps on, so you do want to keep that clean. Now, these screws I've found are just a little bit prone, if you look in here, to just a little bit of gunk building up and a little bit of slight rust, especially down on the bottom there. Now, there's not much we can do about that rust without damaging these screws, and they can be tapped out if need be. And you also get a little bit of rust just on the back here, but I've found that on the back here, it doesn't really matter too much. So we're just going to use our brush. And if you've got some fine steel wool, you can just remove that rust with some fine steel wool, but I found it comes back really quickly, so there's not a whole lot of point in that. But you do just want to keep it clean and try and make sure that it doesn't stay wet when you're no longer sharpening with it. And with all these other parts, these threaded parts, they don't tend to get that dirty. If you want to polish them back up, you can use a bit of honing compound, get them nice and shiny. Sometimes they're tarnished like this one here, so you can just rub it straight on your strop. So once we've done that, if your fence looks dirty at all, I didn't realize that this actually comes off. You can take that part off the fence. It's a little bit dirty, which it shouldn't be because this doesn't really stay near the dirt. You can just give it a quick clean just to remove any of the dust. I believe this is aluminium, so these parts won't rust. But you do just want to keep them clean once again. And just remember that after you've done that, you want to get your little fence piece like this back on here, which just slides on from that top edge. Before we go ahead and put this all back together, reassemble it, we want to make sure that our roller stays in tip-top working order. Now to do that, I've got some 2-in-1 oil here. It doesn't really matter. Any light machine oil will do well. 3-in-1 oil, 2-in-1 oil, whatever you can get will do the job. Even sewing machine oil. So what I'm going to do is, if we get up nice and close here, you can see that you've got the brass roller and then there's a solid metal piece in the middle there. What you want to do to keep that lubricated is to put a couple of drops of your oil in there, give it a spin, put a few more drops in there, and just let that roller take that oil in. And then we can come along and just wipe that excess off just by turning it like that, because we don't want to contaminate anything with that oil. If we're using this on water stones, you especially don't want that oil contaminating anything, so you can just give it a good little wipe off. Now we want to come in on the other side. It's not recessed like it is that side, but there's a little, if you look closely here, there's a little cap piece with a little horseshoe clip holding that in there. So what I like to do is just get right up against, there is sort of like the barrel part in the back here, and there is another little gap in your wheel there, and I just like to get the oil right up in there. Couple of drops, free spin it a few times, and after you've spun that around a few times like this, give it a wipe down. Now before we reassemble these two parts, to stop them rusting, you can either put some paste wax on them or put some of this 3-in-1 oil on them. Push that 3-in-1 oil up and around. Give the screws a little bit of a wipe down like that, and that'll help to prevent them further rusting. Now we want to go ahead and reassemble this jaw part before we put the roller back on. So now we're coming on to reassembling this part. You want to take these plastic washers, push them in each side. Then you want to take your piece here, keep that flat side to the front, because that angled spot is so it doesn't hit the roller. And you want to just push them in so they've just come through a little bit. You don't want to push the screw through too far, because just down in here there's a little recess. And if you look closely at this screw, there's a little lip just here, and that pushes in on that recess. So you want to drop your threaded screw back down a little bit, push it in over into that recess, and then give it a couple of turns until it takes to the screw, until it just holds. Now this side is going to be a little bit easier because that side's already held, so we can just pull that back down, push it up against it like that, and now we can proceed to do these up equally like you would when you're using it to clamp your blade. About that's good. So now we're ready to reattach this back onto our roller. Now to do that, with this roller piece, the roller's always facing forward like that, so you can see that you've got your angle like this when it comes on. So your roller's on the bottom, not on the top. Then we bring this up onto here, and we're going to attach it to whatever one of these numbers we had it in before. I use the yellow ones, which is for your standard angles, which is going to be your most common just here. Now, I like to just put 1 drop of oil in there. Take our screw, make sure your plastic washer is still sitting on that screw, and then line it up like so, and thread it in, do it up until it's held. And that's the maintenance on the main Veritas jig. Now we're just going to go back to reassembling the fence. So on the fence, you have this little lined recess here, and this little angled piece sits in there. Then you want to sort of lift it up so you've got a little bit of a gap, and then this screw runs down and starts going in here. And you just want to keep that loose for when you slide it back on the front of your jig here. And then obviously your little stop, put it back to whatever angle it is that you use, which for me is 30 degrees. And we want to start that thread in there like that. And do it up like we would when we initially set it up. And then we're done. So you can see that we can loosen this screw, push it back on here, do it up, and everything's working perfect. So there you have it, folks. As you can see, with a few basic tools, toothbrush and a bit of paper towel and a little bit of water and some light machine oil, you can do a pretty quick maintenance on the Veritas Honing jig. Now it's important to keep it clean, especially around that roller, and keep that roller lubricated just so it rolls perfectly. And you really don't want to, if you hear any grating sounds or whatever when you're actually using the Veritas Honing guide, when you're sharpening, you want to make sure that you stop, give it a clean, do this whole process, oil it back up, and make sure you're not wearing the internals of that roller out. Now I'm not sure, I haven't actually looked up to see if you can get replacement rollers for these. And if they were, they're not going to be the cheapest to get these replacement parts, but there is no need to replace the parts on this if you take a little bit of care of it and look after it. It's most likely going to last you a lifetime. So if you like this video and you'd like to continue to support me, please consider liking and subscribing down here. And don't forget to tick that sub-notification bell to get all your new notifications. And if you'd like to continue to support me a little bit further, please consider checking me out on Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/Aussiewoodshed. And if you'd like to see some more great videos like this, please check the ones out on the screen here right now. Bye for now.